Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Hope you all had fun last night, and I don't think anyone fell in the pool, so that's always a good thing. We've got a fantastic session over the next 40 minutes or so. Three speakers here, and someone joining us on Zoom as well. We're going to be discussing pay TV across the CEE region, tapping into some of the global trends, perhaps, but also finding out lots about the local changes that are occurring, and also some of the things that aren't changing, and how local producers and platform operators can make the most of this ecosystem. First of all, let me introduce the panel that we've got. To my left, we've got Ziggy Pruski, Commercial Director for Central and Eastern Europe at BBC Studios. Hi, Ziggy. Next, we've got Peter Versong, Head of Content for Europe at Deutsche Telekom. Hi, Peter. At the far end, we've got Dobromira. You have to forgive my pronunciation, Marincheva, Chief Commercial Officer at Bulsatcom in Bulgaria. And hopefully, by the magic of satellite and Zoom, we've got Levente Malne, EVP of AMC Networks International. Hi, Levente. How are you?
Hi.
Great. Lovely stuff. I think we've got him coming over loud and clear. So let's get stuck in. First of all, let's just briefly run through what each of you guys do in terms of the region. I mean, obviously, CEE is a diverse region that we always sort of put together as one. Ziggy, tell us about what BBC Studios does in CEE as a region, mainly Poland. I think you've got lots of experience there, but you work across the region.
Yes. I'm a commercial director for BBC Studios, and I'm responsible for Central and Eastern Europe. As you said, this is quite a diverse and large region. For us, I think it includes around 28 countries, including Baltics, Balkans, but also the CIS countries. And I'm heading the Warsaw office, which is kind of a hub for Central and Eastern Europe. We do not have other offices here. We just work through our agents. So I'm responsible for the commercial part of our branded services. So this means linear channels, but also branded on-demand services.
Great stuff. Okay. Peter, Deutsche Telekom, we all know Deutsche Telekom. You operate primarily focused on the content outside of Germany. What does that entail sort of day-to-day for yourself?
Yeah, so we operate pay TV in 9 European markets right now. So we're launching actually in Poland at the end of the month, our 9th pay TV operation, together with BBC Studios, for example. We have 4 million pay TV subscribers, which are across Greece, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, Austria, Croatia, North Macedonia, and Montenegro. So 9 markets. And in that context, we have 9 different content strategies. Yeah? So we have diverse content strategies in each market, and I connect the dots between all of them. So I'm doing the overarching content strategy, so that for bigger channel groups, we're not talking like on individual markets, and also for streaming services.
Great stuff. Dobby, tell us about Bulsatcom. I'm sure we all know about Bulsatcom, what you guys do, but just briefly, your role there and the operation that you're putting together.
Yeah, well, that's a very nice overview. We have the content negotiation, then you have the marketing sales. So a very, very smooth, compilation of what all the departments do. Bulsatcom, largest pay TV operator in Bulgaria, third largest internet provider. I'm head of all commercial and marketing units, responsible for monetizing, the operation.
Good. Okay. And Levente, tell us about AMC, NI, and your operations. Obviously, a big player across the region. What does your role entail?
Yeah, I'm responsible for one of the 4 regions of AMC International. We call it Central and Northern Europe. Practically, it includes 36 linear television channels from Germany, where we have 1 channel, Kinowelt, throughout Central and Eastern Europe, to Ukraine and the Baltics. And we function across 4 different genres. We have a couple of sports channels. Of course, our most important brand is AMC itself. So we have a couple of film and series channels. We are present in the kids genre, children's channel genre, with 2 brands, Jim Jam and Minimax, and we have a couple of infotainment channels, so documentary channels, cooking channels.
Great stuff, lovely. So essentially, we've got people here. If there's something about pay TV they don't know, then it's not happening. I think we've got it covered. Let's just set the scene. We touched on it earlier, but CEE is a very diverse region. Lots of countries doing things differently. Consumption patterns are changing. Ziggy, you've got quite a nice overview of the region. In terms of sort of the way that pay TV has been changing over the past couple of years, or not changing perhaps, how have you seen the evolution of consumption across the whole region?
Well, clearly, pandemic changed everything. It turned our lives upside down, and people had more time to consume. So I think we've been extremely lucky to be working in the industry that actually rather benefited from the pandemic, when we know that it's not the case for everyone. And it benefited both in terms of pay TV and the streamers, right? Which is also nice. But what we saw is that during this weird time, people were turning into the brands that they trust and that they know. We were talking a second ago with Kasia about the trust. But what's super satisfying for me is that not only they were with us during the pandemic, but they also, it seems they stayed with us, because as the life comes back to some kind of stability and normality. However, it doesn't mean that we can think that it's done, right? It's as the life is going back to normal, people will have less time, and we need to fight for the viewers. And I think the best way to do it is to have and produce and good content and to have good product. But answering your question in terms of the consumption, I mean, it's so many countries, so it's hard to kind of go country by country. I think trends are similar. I think for Poland, for example, it's right after around 4 hours at the average time spent by TV. I think the trend is slightly declining, obviously up during the pandemic. Now it seems that it's going back to the same course.
I fully agree with you, actually. So we also have a very diverse footprint. So I would say in a country like Czech Republic, where we have a quite low pay TV penetration, the average consumption of pay TV is also lower per day, but goes up in other regions up to 4 or 5 hours. I think on average I did research a couple of years ago, it was like 3.5 hours on average across our region. I think that overall the pay TV consumption is stagnating, a bit declining maybe even, but the internet consumption is going up in parallel.
And Dobby, I mean, we were talking yesterday in preparation for the session. You were talking about what's happening in Bulgaria, and it's quite easy. The headlines we often see, viewing numbers for pay TV declining, mainly from the US. We hear cord cutting all the time, but we're finding in Bulgaria that's not really the case so much. I mean, you've still got a huge hourly consumption.
Lucky for us.
Yeah.
Pay TV is still there to stay in Bulgaria. We have over 98% penetration, and then average consumption to what we measure is 5.7 hours per day. The question is how we provide better, more interesting things, how we stay relevant. But in terms of viewership and consumption, be it COVID, be it the market itself, and more or less the fact that we do have a substantial DTH customer base, close to 40% in the market, which does not allow for more interactive functionalities and options to switch in between platforms and look for interesting content. We do have, lucky for us again, a significant, higher average consumption of linear TV.
And Levente, with yourself, obviously US-backed with AMC, how has it changed for you guys? Are you seeing a similar sort of story?
Well, absolutely. And we are also enjoying the extremely high number of hours our consumers, viewers are spending watching television. I mean, in Hungary and Romania, it's over 5 hours, 5 hours and 15, 16 minutes average, which is really robust. And clearly, Dobromira mentioned that Bulgaria is even more. To my best knowledge, there's also Portugal in Europe, and these are kind of the countries with the highest television consumption still. Another interesting phenomena, you guys are in Dubrovnik right now. Unfortunately, I'm not, but I got prepared about Croatia. Pay TV penetration in Croatia in the last 12 years doubled. And also in the last 5 years, it increased by 15%. So there is demand for pay TV. And you raised one question about the US and cord cutting, cord shaving. I think it has a very clear reason why the tendencies of the US and the UK are tendencies which we experience much, much less in Central Eastern Europe. We made a little analysis on the basis of purchasing power parity regarding the cost of pay TV. And it turned out that in Central Eastern Europe, pay TV is still relatively cheap. So I'm not talking objective nominal amounts. I'm talking compared to people's average salary and disposable income, they pay much less for pay TV. I guess Romania has the highest price advantage. Hungary is second. For instance, a Hungarian pays less than half compared to Hungarian living standard versus German living standard to what a German consumer pays for pay TV. And the gap is even larger between Romania and for instance, the UK, where it's 5 times difference. So no wonder, unlike in the United States and the UK, where cord cutting and cord shaving is really a financial exercise, people downgrade their richest cable package and save money by actually picking 2 or 3 streaming service providers. In our part of the world, it's still a premium product to buy streaming services. So I believe that secures, at least for a while, the high consumption of pay TV and the high interest towards pay TV. So to put it simple, it's the cheapest fun in town.
Yeah, I think we're done.
Yep.
I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, there is price differences there, but it's almost providing you guys, I guess, with an opportunity. Is it in that you've still got big market shares, you've still got those huge viewing hours. Dobby, at Bulls.com, how are you looking to sort of go through the evolution of streaming? Are you expecting viewers to start moving towards SVOD services and streaming services? And if so, how are you looking to adapt into that universe?
Thanks. Very, very interesting question. Just to elaborate on the previous topic, a couple of observations that I would say are interesting for the audience. First of all, in Bulls.com, the average number of TV screen per household is 2.1. Just saying how many connected screens there are to the services we provide. And then in a research we performed recently, we found out that 2 out of 7 households have not only one pay TV subscription, they actually have 2 or more, indicating, first of all, how important their service is to them, and second of all, indicating that it's not only about information and entertainment. Sometimes it's more about emotion, and the fact that if the TV service stops, the people in the household might actually have to start talking to each other. So in that aspect, we do realize some, higher degrees of responsibility of what we provide as content and the way we curate the content to our audience. Going back to your question, how we plan to evolve and what we've been doing, Bulls.com is a traditional DTH operator. It started as a satellite company. It evolved and delivers IPTV since 2015. But what we did recently, last year, is we launched our Android box, our Android TV platform. It's called P-Box. And this is where we've been focusing our attention and energy in order to continue aggregating the best content catering to the mass market in Bulgaria, because we are a mass market company, so we cover 18 to 65, and making sure that we have the best of all subcategories of content available. What we've been doing is we went through all our content contracts. We basically researched all of the categories and subcategories, seeing what we have, what is there, what we can provide. And now we're at the stage where we've done that. We've evolved our portfolio from a relatively small price tariff plans to a wider variety of options through, of course, ideas to upsell and cross-sell and provide more and more of the things that are offered. Reaching a point where we are talking about apps, streamers, and ways to provide options to different partners to get to the market together.
And you mentioned that word aggregation, which I think is probably going to be a topic of discussion throughout this market. And you guys recently did a deal with HBO Max, so we've seen one of these big streamers come in, so that's available through your platform. How important is it to get those big US-based streamers onto Bulls.com? And I mean, how much demand is there? Because I know markets differ hugely, and there's demand for US content, of course, but not necessarily quite as much as we might think sometimes.
Hitting on the topics that keep me awake at night. Better and better. First of all, yes, we launched HBO Max yesterday. It's not a huge thing for the market or anyone in particular in the region. It's a huge thing for Bulls.com. We changed our billing system recently, so integration and all of this back-end work has been taking place. But yes, HBO is a partner that's, I would say, established in the region, and the combination of their linear pay TV channels and their OTT platform definitely gives them, first of all, the first mover advantage. Second of all, currently, I would say they have monopolized the market. But yes, there is room for more. What happens with the global streamers? Global streamers, I wouldn't say, are very interested in a small market of about 6 million people. Who speak their own language and really are not interested in consuming content that is not in their own language. So when we talk about attracting or inviting other global streamers into the Bulgarian market, we seem to be knocking on a door that's not opening very easily. So I started saying there's like 0 to 360 degrees shades of partnerships with apps and streamers. There's those that we really want to partner with and invite them over. So we are willing to co-invest in localization, co-invest in marketing strategies, and in pushing them to the Bulgarian market, because we believe there's something that would be interesting, it would be selling, and it would be of value to our proposition as well. And there is those on the other end that do want to enter the market. They see the value in working with us, but at the same time are not very convinced in the quality of their own content themselves. So it's a balance between what is there to really cater to the audience and how much we partner with each other to share the potential revenues.
Right. And Peter, on your point of view, for Deutsche Telekom, the territories that you work in, sort of the impact of streamers. We've had Netflix for years in most of those territories, but we're getting more. We're getting Disney Plus, HBO Max, Discovery Plus, etc. How much are they impacting on your business? Are you finding that they're competing for viewers?
So you can copy and paste actually the strategy of Bulls.com to us, because it's best aggregation, yeah.
Come to Deutsche Telekom.
No, but I'm on the content strategy. I mean,
Thank you.
It is best aggregation, yeah. So also we want to give our customers the best content experience, the best user experience, all the relevant content they want to have. So this is pretty clear. I think that is a off-the-shelf strategy. Yeah? So there's no rocket science behind that one. What you see right now is actually that the OTT landscape also in the region is getting more crowded. Yeah? So I think Disney is launching next week. We have Sky Showtime coming at the end of the year probably. So it's getting more and more international streaming service. And as Levi rightfully said, the pay TV prices in CEE region are comparatively low. Yeah? So we're talking about an average of maybe 10 euros ARPU. Yeah? So across the board, to give it or take a penny. But services who are retailed by 8 euros, 9 euros, there's not much room for SVOD stacking in the end. Yeah? So I believe that services who are investing most into localization or into local content especially, they have the biggest effect on the market.
Mm-hmm. And Levi, yeah, let's turn to yourself. In terms of what AMC is doing in the region, how are you finding a similar sort of experience to Peter with the introduction of these mainly US-based streamers?
Yeah, I totally agree with Peter. Actually, I believe that the symbiosis of linear and streaming on the programming side and cooperation with the partners is the key. And there are different US-based streaming providers and content providers with very different strategies. Some of them withdraw their linear channels and concentrate on streaming only. Some others, and AMC is part of this group, is maintaining, actually strengthening the linear presence and concurrently are preparing for the launch of streaming services. Next year, in the first quarter of next year, in the Central Eastern European region, we will launch AMC Plus, a streaming service of AMC, and our goal is practically I can define in two areas. One of them is to cooperate with our distributors. There are streamers who actually don't really need the traditional distribution partners because they really go direct to consumer. We prefer to work within the good old existing symbiotic relationship with our distributors. So we want to sell our products through cable operators, satellite operators, IPTV operators, so our traditional partners. And the other element of our strategy is we don't really want to be one in the line of all the big streamers. We certainly don't want to and cannot compete with the Disneys in volume, with the Netflixes in having been first. What we try to offer is something different. We would like to offer an alternative strategy. AMC Plus is a slogan in the United States is only the good stuff. So what we try to do is building on AMC's US-based tradition of building stories in epic worlds and distinctive dramas. So, a couple of examples, everyone probably knows The Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, and building on this tradition, we develop further formats, and these are quite interesting and quite breakthrough, and we very strongly believe in them. Just a couple of examples. AMC bought the Anne Rice universe. Anne Rice was the horror writer who unfortunately passed away last year. She wrote Interview with the Vampire, which is of Eastwick. So AMC bought all the rights to turn Anne Rice books into a series. Mm-hmm. We certainly strengthen the Walking Dead universe. We are producing an anthology series, Tales from the Walking Dead, which will be also available on this service. But we will do our own sci-fi called Moonhaven, and we work together with George R.R. Martin about a series called Dark Winds, which is a thriller series situated in the Native American landscape. So this is the US-based tradition of AMC, and we combine it with local stuff because we believe the fact that we are present with dozens of linear channels in this part of the world gives us an understanding of consumers, and consumers, irrelevant of whether they watch linear TV or streaming, they are interested in the same type of content. So if we successfully program linear channels for them, we try to be similarly successful in combining our global assets with some local knowledge and some tailor-made programming. And that's probably much harder for the big global streaming players. And I totally agree that some of the biggest players really primarily look at the largest markets. For us, Central Europe and the Central European countries are very important, and we are going to continue programming for them, both in streaming and in linear.
That's great, thanks, Levi. And Peter, talk to us about Deutsche Telekom. I know you guys have done a little bit of local programming. How important is that local programming to growing your reach and your audience engagement?
I think local content is getting more and more important. So if you are now having an international channel group with just international content without any on-demand part, I think you're doomed in the future, because that is something which is not really relevant in the future. But local content, also international groups investing into local content like AMC is doing right now, this is something that really is important and resonating. It's me? No. Okay. What we also see that local streaming services are getting more and more important. Yes, for example, you have Vojo in Slovakia and Czech Republic, so the CME Group OTT service.
Yep.
We have researched that this will bypass Netflix in the pretty near future already, because they invest heavily into local content, and that is also a chance for us as a telco. For if you partner with local content providers and local OTT players, you create national champions, and by that you are pretty much fit for the future.
Yeah, and so I mean, does this mean that sort of you're almost more you're keener to partner with those local streamers than the Netflix? Well, not that Netflix might not partner with you, but with HBO Max, let's say. I mean, is that sort of how the order is changing in your regions?
Not specifically. I think both is very important. Yes, so you have to have the big names also on board for international content, and for the big names also. I mean, they have names that are not replaceable. Yeah. Brand names. But local content is something which is, again, if you look at some markets, for example, in Greece, you have 5 or 6 big channel groups. They together have 80% of the viewership. Yeah, so we can't live without that one as well.
Yeah, and Ziggy. BBC Studios, obviously you're taking a lot of UK content, almost all UK content, and putting it onto channels and you've got your own streamer as well. Talk to us a little bit about what BBC Studios is doing to attract local viewers across the region with sort of your channels, but also you've got your streamer. So how do you balance those two worlds?
Well, I think some time ago we've been doing like a focus groups, and as a result of that, we learned that many viewers were not really expecting local content from BBC, because they were expecting that they will see the programs that are well known and appreciated by those viewers from the UK. So, but I absolutely believe that the local content is super important, and it's not that we are not, looking in this direction, but it's also about for BBC the quality is super important, and clearly, we are focusing on delivering our biggest, best shows that attract the audiences. For us, still in the region, I think we are quite open. I mean, the most important thing is that we are looking at ourselves as a content company, right? We produce content, we invest in the IP, and the way people consume it, it's kind of secondary to us. So in Central and Eastern Europe, pay TV is strong, and looking at all the data, it seems that it will continue to be strong for the next at least couple of years. And I guess it's at this stage the only thing that we can be certain is that we cannot be certain of anything. But I mean, it's changing so fast that I think looking at more than like 3 to 5 years makes no sense. But in this short-term period, we definitely believe that the pay TV will remain a main way that people will consume. But absolutely there is growth. The growth will come from the OTT. The growth will come from digital. So we are investing in that. We just a couple of days we've launched BBC Player in cooperation with Canal Plus in Poland. So for us, it's like the first thing is to create good content. Second of all is to deliver this to the viewers the way they want it at the convenient time, etc. So So we do both,
Yeah.
and I think that's the way to do it.
And Levi, you mentioned, let's just turn to the content side of things. You mentioned a lot of the US shows that are coming over, but you're also investing locally in CEE as well. We haven't mentioned money at all yet, and we've only got 15 minutes left. So let's talk about the money. I mean, if Netflix and a lot of these US-based streamers don't think it's cost efficient, however you want to put it, to invest in local programming, what makes you think, for AMC, it's worth that investment? And perhaps you can name drop a few of the shows that you've got coming up as well.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, we are diversified in 4 different genres, which actually helps. Second, we are financially extremely prudent. And so whenever we make a content decision, then we do our maths, and we are oftentimes rather careful, and maybe we can be accused of having baby steps, but we try to make sure what we do is the right thing. For instance, we have been careful so far in producing fiction locally. We are actually now working on the first co-production for fiction for AMC in the region. But what we have been quite successful in the last few years was documentaries. So on our Spectrum channels, we produced a bunch of documentaries which got awarded international documentary prizes. This year we won a prize in India, in Japan, last year in Mexico, in the United States. So we try to produce documentaries that can only be produced in Central Eastern Europe, but they have a wider interest also outside Central Eastern Europe. One series was Taboos Without Taboos, which we produced 2 seasons of, and we keep producing. Well, we produced a documentary regarding the Danube, and exciting places in Central Eastern Europe where people just simply cannot get access to, like a nuclear power plant, and these kind of documentaries which raised interest even beyond Central Eastern Europe. And of course, in some of our markets we have sports, which is the Jolly Joker in pay TV. Nevertheless, that kind of contradicts the first thought I shared with you regarding being careful, because in sports you have to put much bigger bets, but most of the times those bets for us seemed to have worked in the past. And also we have the kids genre where it's much tougher to do original programming. It's much more short format that we experiment with. So you have to really tailor make. And there are countries where it makes sense to produce locally, where there are countries where it doesn't. So the challenge is there's no one size fits all. Nevertheless, the ground rule is original programming, once it's relevant, once it's produced from budgets which the market can pay for, will actually break through and will financially bring returns. Now, there's another phenomena which I think we need to mention, because that creates a little schizophrenic situation for many of us in the industry. We are always very proudly talking about the second golden age of television, because in the last few years, the amount of the volume of television production, especially in fiction, skyrocketed all over the world. And then we saw what happened to Netflix's stock price. So it's extremely important to be calculating, to be cautious, because at the end of the day, the money you invest in production will, one way or the other, has to return, has to produce its financial benefits to the investor. And again, I can just emphasize, our way is being present both in streaming and in linear. And I think that symbiosis, plus the scale, the economies of scale, plus the diversification among the genres, is what's giving us, we hope, a better future, a safer path than for those who are single market, single genre, big bets.
And just a quick one, in terms of the content there, you mentioned your first scripted show is in the works. How do you sort of see that trajectory changing? Are you expecting it, this time, 3 years' time, you'll be producing 5, 10 shows, or is it those baby steps you talked about?
I guess it is yet to be seen. Clearly, that is the goal, but I don't want to make a commitment because we will have to see how that content will resonate and on which market people consume more. So I don't want to make irresponsible promises. All I can say is that we are quite heavily active in looking at stuff, signing scripts, discussing with producers, and we see some light at the end of the tunnel. But clearly, Central Eastern Europe, from a fiction perspective, is still far behind the United States. So for AMC, I guess the main volume of fiction will still be the United States for a while, the US studios, and we try to be smart and opportunistic in producing fiction for tailor-made for the Central Eastern European countries as well, in a careful manner.
Good stuff. Dobby, in Bulgaria, local content, at the moment, I know we've been talking about this, but I presume local content is the thing that cuts through for you guys as well. And how important is it to get hold of that local content? And also, what types of shows are really attracting your subscribers and retaining them?
Yes, local content. So first of all, I couldn't agree more that a combination of a linear channel with an OTT is the future, and the working model where we have a promotional engine driving traffic into a VOD type of access or some other kind of library. And this is why we'll be preparing our platforms to be ready to provide the gateway to that. And local content, yes, I also believe that local content is growing in importance. And is typical to Greece. We do have not 5, but we have 2 major media groups that consume over 80% of the viewership time. And they have been focusing on local content, be it TV series, be it shows, be it formats. We do also focus on local content because during our analysis through the subcategories, we identified huge gaps of local content missing. One is sports. We do partner with a sports channel who is focusing on Bulgarian sports 99% of the time, and not only soccer. It turns out that we won 5 gold medals in the last Olympics, and no one knew about our pretenders. No one knew about our sports stars. No one was there to talk about them, to provide the storylines, the stories behind their success. So what we did is 2 things. On one side, we identified a local sports channel that we exclusively partner with now, and they're the distribution of the information. And then on the other side, we started partnering with a high-quality production studio with journalists and people who know how to provide the latest technology in the storytelling, so that we start turning the wheels of an ecosystem that's more or less missing on the Bulgarian market, because we do not have many, if any, really marketable and sellable sports products. This is sports. We have been doing the same thing in 2 other large categories. One is movies. We rebranded and started reinvesting in 3 movie channels of our own, simply because they are in the price range between mass market channels and premium content, such as HBO, for example. We just identified a gap of high-quality movie channels that was missing. Another thing we identified was that European cinema was not well represented amongst the selection of options. So we do focus a lot on on European cinema, over 60%. Popular faces, on good stories, on acclaimed directors. And then another area we're focusing on is news and polythematic channels, having only two media groups and a national TV that we do not believe is at the quality and the level it should be. We start partnering with a news channel, investing in more and more objective journalism and more news formats that we want to watch ourselves. So we have definitely been looking into the content, down to the content itself of what we're pushing to the market.
Great stuff. We've only got 5 minutes left, so let's do a bit of crystal ball gazing and predict what should we say, 3 years? Can we do that? Ziggy, what do you expect? I mean, pay TV, it seems that you said before, the projections are that pay TV is going to remain fairly steady, maybe decline in some markets. What's going to happen on the streaming side of things? Is that going to sort of gobble up pay TV, or is it going to balance out? What's your prediction?
I mean, I'm pretty sure. I mean, the growth, as I said already, the growth will come from the OTT, but in this time frame of another couple of years, I don't think the streamers will be overtaking the pay TV. I don't even think it will be close, to be honest. It seems that the pay TV should be still around like 60% of the of the subscription market, meaning pay TV plus the streamers. So it seems that it's something that we briefly touched on. I mean, the differences between, again, the US market versus Europe versus, all the challenges. I mean, I think making the kind of, generalization about CEE is just, there's so many countries. Yep. Even neighboring countries have a very different dynamics and different expectations in terms of, how the content is localized, right? So the big players, the big streamers, they have to prioritize. They will prioritize bigger markets where it's easier to get the return on investment. Yep. And therefore, there is definitely a space. One thing is that about the amount of choice. I mean, there's like this content fatigue that we are starting to hear a bit, because it's like, I think here we for the past years, we've been like, waiting for Netflix to come, waiting for the big streamers to come, and that was exciting. But now it seems like there's more and more of that, and people have a problem with selecting kind of, first of all, the content they want to watch, how much time we spend on choosing what we want to watch, right? And it's a problem. So I think it's definitely a chance for the local play, for pay TV providers to become those aggregators, to help people to navigate. Having, simplicity, right? Having everything in one place, in one box, on one bill, and being able to search for the content. People have really a problem now to navigate where they can find the show they like, right? So I think it's a chance, and for us, and similar to unfortunately, I need to agree with everything we are saying, because it might be boring, but as Levente said, I look at it exactly the same. We as a company look at it the same, is that, our core business is pay TV still, and we believe that our role is to support, and partner with our customers, and we are adding the value by adding the on-demand services, like mentioned BBC Player, but we want to do it together, right? We don't want to kind of leave everything now and go into the OTT business. I think it's about just working together. I think there's a huge role, and maybe sometimes underestimated, of the local players. They know their audiences inside out. They are in these markets, for years. They have content, local content. They have knowledge. They know how to do it. It's they're in a very good place to succeed in the future. So
surprisingly, I fully agree. But I believe also that in the future there will not be a dominance of the OTT streaming services at all, and certainly not the big players. I think that the regional players are getting more and more important. But I also believe in the coexistence of linear and OTT. So I think that, and our role as being best aggregator or super aggregator is not only aggregating all the content, but it's also about recommendation, about unified search, unified recommendation. Yes, that you don't search like half an hour for content you want to watch for another half an hour. Yeah? So that's customer experience. I mean, in the past we always said that content is king. I think customer experience together with content is king. I think that is.
And can I just add to that? I mean, there is I really believe the curation is super important, and I think it's about curation in terms of pay TV providers, just helping people to navigate across the content. But I think it's also about the broadcaster, the provider of the content, is to curate your offer into the way that people, it's easy for people to navigate. I think it's also very important.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter, for your contribution there as well. I think we're out of time, so I'm going to rattle through the last two quickly. Dobby, what do you expect for Bolsatcom? Again, aggregation, partnerships, it seems, are sort of the key.
I would like to play the devil's advocate for a second,
good.
because we're all sold on our idea how great we are.
Disagreement, excellent.
Within the next 3 to 5 years, yes, pay TV is definitely there to stay. Yes, I believe we'll be in the direction of content aggregation, curation, recommendation, and just means to get to the end customer through the established distributors. But my son is 13. He doesn't watch TV. He doesn't even think about turning the TV on. He has a laptop, he has a tablet, he has a handheld, a mobile handheld. He's on Netflix, he's on HBO Max, he knows everything on Amazon Prime. And he doesn't even think about what is happening locally or what's happening on the market. So here the question of how to stay relevant in the long run. And yes, this is a generation that's going to have a family, that's going to have a household, kids show up, but then kids' content is on YouTube. Here is the question of how to really build brand awareness and brand loyalty and addiction to these distributors in order for us to stay relevant in the long run. It's just some questions for, I'm sure, much bigger companies are definitely in their heads. So yes, today we're safe to say that we're okay, but in the long run, definitely the industry and the supply chain leading down to the content will stay, it'll be local and it will be global, and then there's the players of the value system of how we all play around with each other and monetize.
That's good. And Levi, what do you make of that? Similar thoughts or?
Yeah, I just would like to add one thought that in our industry, decade by decade, there is a fear of having to bury someone. When the movie industry got threatened by commercial television in the US in the 50s, 60s. Then when pay TV came, then traditional free-to-air broadcasters got threatened. And then when streamers came, then traditional pay TV got threatened. And what we see is that the pie is becoming bigger and bigger. The quality of content available is increasing. The quantity is increasing. So we just need to be smart figuring out how to channel it and how to monetize it. And I think the key is what has been said in this panel by practically everyone. Content producers need to produce content and build brands, and our distribution partners need to help navigating, help giving a good consumer experience, and we need to work in partnership. And once that's done well, then I think this business model will sustain for a while. And 10-year-olds, might shift this a little bit, but I don't think it's a 5-year trend. I think there's a good 10, 15, 20 years in doing it this way, the way we are doing it right now, if we do it right. If there is proper partnership, if everyone's responsible, if key players look at the industry longer term and not just yearly budgets and quarterly budgets.
Good stuff. That's great. We're a little bit over time, so we're going to have to wrap it up there. Just like to say to my panel, thank you very much. We've got Ziggy, Peter, Dobby, and Levi. Thank you very much for your time, for joining us. Thank you to the audience for coming along.
Thank you,
Enjoy
Richard.
the rest of your time. Cheers.
You've been great. Thanks so much.